My fiancée cheated with 3 men at her bachelorette party. Her best friend sent me the video 2 months before the wedding. But when I canceled everything and blocked her number, she lost her parents, her friends, her job, and ended up living in poverty. I'm 30 years old. I work in financial consulting, and what happened a few months ago basically destroyed what I thought would be my entire life. I guess I should start at the beginning, when I met Melissa. We were 24. I had just gotten my first decent job after college, and she was working in marketing for a mid-sized company. Nothing spectacular, but stable, you know. We met at one of those boring birthday parties for a mutual friend, and honestly, we connected right away. She was cute, smart, we had the same taste in movies and music, and most importantly, or so I thought, we shared the same values about what we wanted in a relationship. We spent 6 years together, 6 years building a life, saving for an apartment, planning trips, talking about eventually having kids, all that stuff. I proposed to her about a year and a half ago, nothing super fancy but meaningful, in the same park where we had our first date, and she cried and said yes, and I thought, this is it, I'm finally doing everything right. The following months were crazy with wedding planning, and I'm not gonna lie, it was stressful. Melissa became kind of obsessive with the details, like she had folders and spreadsheets for everything. But I thought it was normal, that all brides get like that. Her best friend, Cassandra, was super involved in everything, which sometimes bothered me because I felt she had too much influence over Melissa, but well, they'd been friends since high school, so what could I say? Cassandra always seemed kind of problematic to me. I mean, she was one of those people who always has some drama in their life and somehow manages to drag everyone else into their problems, you know what I mean? But Melissa adored her, so I tried to get along with her. The bachelorette party was planned for 2 months before the wedding. They were going to a resort about 2 hours outside the city. They had a whole weekend planned with spa and drinks and I don't know what else. Melissa was super excited. And I was also planning my bachelor party with my friends for the following week. Something more low-key but still fun. And that Friday, when Melissa was supposed to already be at the resort, I got out of work early because we had a client cancel a last-minute meeting. I got to the apartment around 3 in the afternoon, and there was a package outside the door. It wasn't anything big, like a shoebox or something, and it had my name written by hand with a black marker. There was no return address or anything, which seemed weird to me, but I thought maybe it was some surprise gift from Melissa or something. I brought it inside and left it on the kitchen table while I made myself something to eat. The thing is, curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. And inside was a USB drive. One of those regular ones you can buy anywhere, and a handwritten note that said, "Thought you should see this before making a mistake. I'm sorry." It was signed by Cassandra. I stood there like an idiot, looking at that note and the USB drive for, I don't know how long, like 5 minutes maybe, trying to process what it could be. Part of me didn't want to know, honestly, because I knew that whatever was on that drive was going to be bad. People don't send anonymous things with cryptic messages when they're good news. But the other part of me, the bigger part I guess, needed to know. I went to my laptop, plugged it in, and there was only one video file. I opened it, and at first I didn't understand what I was seeing. It was like a hotel room, kind of dark. You could see the bed and there was background music, that horrible club music playing really loud. And then I saw Melissa. She was on the bed with a guy who was definitely not me, and they weren't playing cards exactly. You know what I mean? I think my brain shut down for a moment because I couldn't process what I was seeing. I kept staring at the screen and the video continued. And there was more. Like it wasn't just one guy. It was 3 different ones at different times during the night. 3. The camera moved a little, like someone was holding it with their phone trying not to be too obvious. And at some points you could hear voices in the background laughing and cheering, including Cassandra's voice saying things like, "Come on, Mel," and "Take advantage while you're single for the last time." The video lasted about 20 minutes total. I didn't watch it all because at some point I had to run to the bathroom to throw up. I literally threw up. It's not an exaggeration. I knelt in front of the toilet and got out everything I had in my stomach while my mind tried to understand what I had just seen. After I don't know how long in the bathroom, I went back to the living room and sat on the couch staring at the wall. I wasn't crying or screaming or anything. I just sat there in absolute silence. My phone started ringing. It was Melissa sending messages about how fun the weekend was being, that she missed me, that she couldn't wait to marry me. I read the messages and felt nothing. Like my body was there, but my mind was somewhere else completely. I think I went into autopilot mode because the next thing I remember is packing my things. Not everything, just the essentials: clothes, laptop, important documents, and I put them in a big suitcase and a backpack. I left my engagement ring on the kitchen table next to the USB drive. I didn't write any note or anything. I just left the apartment, put everything in my car, and drove. I didn't have a specific plan. I just knew I couldn't be there when she got back. I drove for about 2 hours until I found a resort in the middle of nowhere, one of those quiet places where people go to disconnect, and I rented a cabin for a week. I sent a message to my boss saying I'd had a family emergency and needed time, and he was understanding and told me to take whatever I needed. I turned off my phone completely that first night. I didn't even want to see if Melissa had tried to contact me. The truth is, I spent the first 2 days basically in shock. I walked through the forest around the cabin, sat by the lake that was nearby, and processed what I had seen. Part of me still didn't believe it, like my brain was trying to find some alternative explanation, but there wasn't one. The video was clear. There was no way to misinterpret it or justify it. On the third day, I turned on my phone, and I had like 100 messages from Melissa and 30 missed calls. The messages started normal, like, "How are you?" and "Why aren't you answering?" But they escalated as the hours passed until the last ones were completely desperate. "Where are you?" "I'm worried. Please answer." There were also messages from some friends asking if I was okay because Melissa had contacted them looking for me. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I called the place where we had booked for the wedding and canceled everything. I had to pay a penalty because it was less than 2 months away, but honestly, I didn't care. I would have paid double just to not have to deal with that farce. The woman on the other end of the line sounded uncomfortable and asked me if I wanted to reschedule instead of cancel, and I just told her, "No, please cancel everything." And she said she was sorry and hung up. After that, I needed answers. Not from Melissa, because honestly, I didn't care what she had to say, but I did want to know why Cassandra had sent that video. I mean, she was her best friend, right? Why would she expose Melissa like that? I sent her a message saying I needed to talk to her and that if she didn't agree, I was going to assume everything had been her idea and would act accordingly. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop on 7th Street when I got back to the city. I came back 3 days later, not to the apartment but to the hotel near my office, and I stayed there. I sent Melissa a message for the first time in a week saying simply, "Check the kitchen, table. Don't try to contact me." And I blocked her number again. The meeting with Cassandra was weird. She arrived at the coffee shop looking guilty, but also defiant, if that makes sense. We sat at a table in the corner and she started talking before I could say anything. She explained that she had been the one who organized the whole situation at the resort, that she had hired the guys, yes, hired them, they were strippers or escorts or something like that, and that she had thought Melissa would have fun and what was wrong with it if it was her last night as a single woman. But then Melissa went too far, according to Cassandra, like she expected there would just be dancing and maybe some kisses or something, but Melissa went way beyond and Cassandra realized she had screwed up. She recorded everything with her phone because in the moment she thought it would be funny and they could laugh about it later. But when she saw what had actually happened and saw Melissa the next day acting like nothing happened, like she was going to go home and continue with the wedding as if she hadn't done anything wrong, Cassandra apparently had a crisis of conscience. I asked her why she didn't just tell me in person or call me, and she said she was afraid I wouldn't believe her if I didn't see evidence, and also that she didn't want Melissa to know it had been her who told me because it would ruin their friendship. I told her their friendship was already ruined anyway, and that what she had done, both organizing that situation and recording and sending the video, was twisted. She started crying and saying she was just trying to do the right thing, that she herself had been cheated on in the past and knew how it felt and didn't want me to go through that without knowing. Honestly, I don't know whether to believe her or not. Like, part of me thinks maybe she had a fight with Melissa about something and sent the video out of revenge. But in the end, what did it really matter? The damage. There was already done. I had seen what I had seen, and there was no way to go back. After talking to Cassandra, I knew the next thing I had to do was talk to Melissa's parents. Virginia, and Raymond. They had always been super conservative, like they go to church every Sunday and have very traditional ideas about marriage and fidelity. I had a decent relationship with them. Raymond, in particular, had always treated me well. He saw me as the ideal son-in-law or something like that. Melissa worked at the same company where Raymond was an area manager. He had basically gotten her the job and protected her from any problems that came up. I called Virginia and told her I needed to talk to them about something important related to Melissa, and she immediately got nervous and asked me if Melissa was okay, if something had happened. I told her it was better if we talked in person, and she agreed to let me come to their house that same afternoon. Arriving at that house was surreal, because I had been there hundreds of times, for family dinners and celebrations and holidays, and it had always been a warm and happy place for me. That afternoon, it felt completely different. Virginia and Raymond were sitting in the living room waiting for me, and Melissa wasn't there because she was still at her old apartment desperately trying to contact me. I sat in front of them and basically got straight to the point. I told them the wedding was canceled because Melissa had been unfaithful to me at her bachelorette party. Virginia went pale, and Raymond turned red, like I could see the veins in his neck bulging. They started asking the typical questions. If I was sure, if there wasn't a misunderstanding, that Melissa would never do something like that. I told them I had video evidence and asked them if they wanted to see it. There was a heavy silence, and then Raymond said yes, that he needed to see to believe. I took out my laptop and showed them the video. Not all of it, because I wasn't going to subject them to that, but enough for them to understand what had happened. It was horrible watching them process what they were seeing. Virginia started crying quietly, and Raymond just stared at the screen with an expression of absolute shock. When it ended, Virginia got up and went to her room without saying anything, and Raymond sat there for a moment before asking me if Melissa knew I had the video. I told him yes, that I had left the USB drive where she could find it. He nodded slowly and then told me he was sorry, that he understood why I had canceled the wedding and that he didn't blame me. He also told me something that surprised me, that they were going to have a serious conversation with Melissa when she got home that night, because this went against everything they had taught her. I didn't stay much longer after that. Honestly, the situation was too uncomfortable, and I had already said what I needed to say. That night, as I found out later from Skylar, who is a mutual friend of Melissa's and mine, Virginia and Raymond confronted Melissa when she arrived. Apparently, it was a horrible scene. Melissa tried to deny everything at first, until Raymond told her he had seen the video with his own eyes. Then she changed tactics and tried to minimize it, saying she had been drunk and it was a mistake and it didn't mean anything. Virginia told her she was disappointed, not only by what she had done, but by how she had lied and tried to manipulate them even in that moment. In the end, they gave her an ultimatum. She had to move out of their house and sort out her life on her own because they weren't going to support that kind of behavior. Melissa started calling all our mutual friends looking for a place to stay and trying to explain her version of events. I had already contacted the closest ones, including Lindsay and Marcus, and had told them what happened. Some believed me right away, and others wanted to hear Melissa's side before taking sides. I told them I could show them the video if they wanted, and some, like Marcus, said it wasn't necessary, that they trusted my word, but others, like Lindsay, did want to see it. After seeing the evidence, basically everyone cut contact with Melissa. Lindsay, in particular, got really angry because she had been one of the guests at the bachelorette party and felt betrayed knowing all that had happened while she was sleeping in another room at the resort without having any idea. The thing is, the situation got worse quickly for Melissa, in ways I hadn't anticipated. Cassandra, and she had a massive fight when Melissa realized Cassandra had been the one who sent the video, and they basically ended their friendship of years in a series of horrible text messages that Skylar showed me later. Melissa begged Cassandra to help her, to let her stay at her apartment for a while until she found something permanent, but Cassandra flatly refused. Then, about 2 weeks after all this, Melissa lost her job. At first, I didn't understand how that had happened. But later, Skylar told me that Raymond had stopped protecting her at the company, and when some coworkers started talking about what had happened, because someone, I don't know who, had shared the story, management decided it was too much drama and let her go with some corporate excuse about restructuring. Everything fell apart for her in like a month. She lost her fiancé, her parents, her friends, her best friend, her job, everything. She ended up living on acquaintances' couches for a while, jumping from house to house every few weeks when people got tired of having her there. Skylar kept me updated on everything, because she still talked to some people who had indirect contact with Melissa, and the stories got sadder and sadder. Melissa apparently tried to reach out to Marcus to ask him for financial help, like a loan so she could rent an apartment, but Marcus told her no, that she had made her choices and now had to live with the consequences. Eventually, she managed to rent an apartment in a horrible part of the city, like one of those places where you don't even want to park your car on the street for fear of it getting stolen. But it was all she could afford with the money she had saved. The last update I had about her was about a month ago. Skylar told me Melissa had gotten a part-time job at a coffee shop because she couldn't find anything in her field after word got around the industry about why she had been fired from her previous job. She had no friends left. Everyone had cut contact with her completely, and apparently she was living basically in poverty compared to how she lived before. Skylar also mentioned she was going to stop giving me updates because she herself had decided to cut all ties with Melissa, that she no longer wanted to be associated with her in any way. And I told her I understood perfectly and that I appreciated that she had kept me informed, but she was right. That it was time to leave that part of our lives behind completely. As for me, I moved to a new apartment in a better area of the city about 3 months after all this. I cut all contact with anyone who still maintained a relationship with Melissa, not because I held a grudge, but because I needed to start fresh. You know what I mean? I went back to therapy, something I had stopped years ago, and that helped me process everything that happened without becoming bitter or cynical about relationships in general. My friends have been incredible through all this, especially Marcus, who basically became my unofficial therapist in those first months when I was processing everything. I got more into work and got a promotion I'd been looking for a while. I started exercising regularly again. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned when I was planning the wedding. Do I regret how I handled the situation? Not really. There are people who have told me I was too harsh, that I should have given Melissa the chance to explain herself or apologize in person, but honestly, I don't see what that would have changed. She made decisions, multiple decisions consciously throughout that night, knowing perfectly well that she was engaged to me and that we were getting married in 2 months. It wasn't an impulsive kiss with an ex in a moment of weakness. It was hours with 3 different guys while her friends cheered her on. And then she came home and acted like nothing happened, sent me messages telling me she loved me and couldn't wait to be my wife. That's what kills me to this day. Not just what she did, but how she could act so normal afterward, as if she hadn't destroyed everything between us. Last week, I was at the supermarket and almost ran into Virginia in the dairy aisle. She saw me first, and for a second, I thought she was going to turn and go the other way, but she didn't. She came over and asked me how I was, and I told her good, that I was focused on my work and rebuilding my life. She nodded and looked tired. Like, she had those wrinkles around her eyes that I don't remember her having before. She told me she was very sorry for what had happened, and that Raymond and she sometimes wondered where they had failed as parents. I told her it wasn't their fault, that Melissa was an adult and had made her own decisions. We stood there awkwardly for a moment, and then she asked me if I ever thought about forgiving her. I told her honestly that I didn't know, that maybe someday, but for now I needed to focus on myself. She understood, and we said goodbye. And as I watched her walk away, I realized that was probably the last time I would talk to her or any member of that family. And I guess that's how things are now. I don't feel satisfaction about everything that happened to Melissa afterward. It's not like I'm celebrating that she lost everything, but I don't feel guilt or pity either. She did what she did, knowing it could destroy our relationship if I found out, and she simply had the bad luck that someone documented everything and sent it to me. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if Cassandra had never sent that video. If I had married Melissa without ever knowing the truth, and that gives me chills. I would have built an entire life based on a lie. I would have had children with someone who betrayed me and never told me. I would have wasted decades with someone who clearly didn't respect me or our relationship. So, in a way, as painful as it was to discover everything, it was better to know before than after. There's no happy ending or profound lesson here, just a relationship that ended in the worst possible way and the consequences that followed. And I'm okay with that now, I guess.